The echo.
No, I can hear it too.
In here as well.
May I just ask, Marilka, is it you who is moderating the chat with Hannah? Okay.
Yes,
Perfect.
and about the echo, it usually happens when multiple speakers are not muted. So suggest that if one speaker is speaking, we all mute ourselves so we will avoid an echo.
May I? Now everyone is muted.
Yes.
Do you want us to start at 5 sharp?
Yeah, sure. If everyone's present, that's all right.
I believe that's the case, correct? All right. So welcome all to our event on careers in alternative dispute resolution that stands called ADR, which is organized within the framework of the Employment Network event at the Hague University of Applied Sciences. Employment Network event is organized by Mr. Aurélien Lorange from the International and European Bachelor of Law program. And this year, we are celebrating the 10th edition of Employment Network event. Employment Network event is a very special study fair for students, mostly from law, but also from other programs, including European studies or international public management. So thank you very much, Aurélien, for giving us this opportunity to familiarize students with alternative dispute resolution. And thank you very much, our distinguished guests, for accepting the invitation to speak and interact with our students. My name is Barbara Barbas. I'm a lecturer in multi-level regulation and alternative dispute resolution and director of the Center of Expertise on Global Governance at the Hague University. And together with Dr. Artemis Maliaropoulou, today I will co-host our event. Dr. Artemis Maliaropoulou is a researcher at the Center of Expertise on Global Governance, and she's also a lecturer in the law program, including in the dispute resolution minor. So the purpose of the event today is to get our students more familiar with alternative dispute resolution, of course, through the stories of our distinguished speakers, and also to provide students with the opportunity to ask questions. We will start with questions with Artemis, but then we will also have the Q&A session during which students will be free to ask their questions. And you can also do this through the YouTube chat, which will be kindly moderated by Hanna Falkiewicz and Marilka Wendy, two students from the law program. I think that's it for the start. And now I will give the floor to Artemis, who will also introduce our distinguished speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara, and thank you very much, Aurélien, for this fantastic opportunity offered, and thank you for allowing me to participate in this fantastic project. Our speakers today actually need no introduction. We could spend the whole day discussing their achievements, and there is no presentation that can make justice to their hard work and talent. I will try briefly to summarize a summary of the main stations of the very exciting journey. Rika is the executive director of the New York International Arbitration Center. Founded in 2013, the New York International Arbitration Center is a non-profit organization that promotes and enhances the conduct of international arbitration in New York, offers educational programming, and operates world-class hearing facilities for rent in Midtown Manhattan. Prior to joining the New York International Arbitration Center, Rika was director of ADR services for the New York Commercial Division of the American Arbitration Association International Center for Dispute Resolution. Rika also served as case counsel for the ICDR, focusing her work on the European and Sub-Saharan Africa regions. As a New York qualified lawyer, Rika serves as a member of the New York City Bar's Inter-American Affairs Committee and chairs of its arbitration subcommittee. Rika is also board member of the Association of Conflict Resolution of Greater New York and the New York Coalition of Women's Initiatives. Rika is co-chair of the Private International Law Interest Group at the American Society of International Law and member of the Executive Committee of the Section of Dispute Resolution. Rika is also a member of Arbitral Women, an associate editor of the U.S. Investment Arbitration Conference volumes, adjunct professor at Seton Hall Law School, and peer review board member of the American Review of International Arbitration at Columbia Law School. Rika is also one of the founders of the REAL project, which we're going to discuss later. It's an organization of lawyers striving to achieve racial equality for arbitration lawyers and promoting representation of underrepresented groups in the field. Now I would like to turn to Sneha Astikar. Sneha is an Indian international arbitration lawyer with 9 years of experience as an advocate under her belt. Since Youth Mundi made its very first steps in the international arena in 2018, Sneha decided to join this innovative team in Paris. Youth Mundi is arguably the most successful startup in the field of AI-powered technology that efficiently delivers thorough legal research and due diligence with full confidence. In such a short period of time, Youth Mundi has become the right hand of international arbitration lawyers across the globe. And before this position, she was working as an associate in a boutique law firm in Paris, and she also clerked with the High Court of Bombay. She has been co-hosting Arbitration Happy Hour at the Clubhouse, and we will learn more about this later. And she is also the head of marketing of the REAL initiative. Now I am turning to Maria Irene Ferruccio. Maria Irene is a double qualified lawyer in Milan, Italy, and Paris, France, and works as an in-house counsel for the international disputes team of the Italian construction group We Build. She previously worked as deputy counsel at the International Court of Arbitration of the ICC. Before that, she was working in the International Arbitration Department of White & Case in Paris, where she specialized in international arbitration and litigation in the areas of energy and construction. She is co-founder and vice president of the group Young Practitioners of Construction in Paris, co-founder and co-chair of AIA ARB EAT Below 40, which is the Italian Association for Young Arbitration Practitioners, and we are looking forward to learning more about this. And now I'm turning to Dr. Kabir Gikal. Kabir is a lecturer at Columbia Law School and a senior attorney in Arnold and Porter's New York office, focusing on international investment arbitration, international commercial arbitration, and public international law matters, serving both as counsel and arbitrator. Kabir's experience flows from his triple training in international law, common law, and civil law traditions. Kabir also acts as a consultant for the United Nations Office of the High Representative for Least Developed Countries, Landlocked Developing Countries, and Small Island Developing States on the creation of a novel investment support program. He has also conducted training and capacity building sessions for several governments, including Colombia, Saudi Arabia, Myanmar, India, Philippines, among others, on public international law and dispute resolution matters. Kabir is also the managing editor for Columbia Law School's American Review of International Arbitration and an author and co-author of a number of books and fantastic papers. He has been the recipient of a number of awards, including but not limited to the inaugural Diversity Fellowship by the American Bar Association and the award for the 2020 Dispute Resolution Practitioner of the Year for the Americas. Furthermore, he hosts a leading webinar series entitled Delos Tag Time, which involves conversations with leading arbitrators from all over the world. He is one of the founders of the Racial Equality for Arbitration Lawyers Initiative and of the Rising Arbitrators Initiative. Moving now to Diane Nicolov. Diane is an alumnus of the Hague University. Following his graduation from the Hague University in 2013, Diane completed a master's degree in maritime law at the University of Southampton. In 2015, he started paving his professional path in the shipping industry and enrolled at the Institute of Chartered Seabrokers. Since 2018, he's been a full member of the ICS. He worked as a litigation assistant and paralegal for prestigious city law firms prior to joining the Japan P&I Club. He has been working since 2018 as a claims executive at the Japan P&I Club, which is the sole organization in Japan underwriting P&I insurance for both ocean-going vessels and Japanese coastal vessels. He is responsible for handling P&I and FD&D matters, such as cargo claims, crew cases, seat causalities, and issues on policy cover. Last but not least, selection of the dispute resolution mechanism that is more suitable for each potential dispute in the shipping field falls into the scope of his work. And now I think I would like to hand it over to Barbara to kick off the discussion with our stellar panelists.
Thank you very much, Artemis, and welcome again, our distinguished speakers. I'm looking forward to hearing your fascinating stories. So let's start with the first question, a warming up question, probably a very general one. A few years ago, arbitration maybe, or dispute resolution, alternative dispute resolution, wasn't as popular as now. So we're or at least maybe it wasn't as popular for younger practitioners. If you could tell us what attracted you to arbitration or alternative dispute resolution, why this field, how you ended up practicing ADR, and maybe you could also share some example that our students will like to hear. I suggest that we follow the order of the presentation. So if we could start with Rika.
How did you get it?
So I think, like many people in our field, I discovered international arbitration by participating in the VIS arbitration moot, and I was just enthralled. I mean, what a phenomenal way to get to argue a moot problem that you take very seriously for 1 year, devote all of your energy and time, and then convene and have the luxury really to convene in Vienna, or nowadays in Hong Kong, and just get the luxury to meet all of these people. I mean, I think after something like that, you really believe our field is very special. I've often heard people say, "Oh, international arbitration, of course, it's such a sexy option." The truth is, this notion that you can be licensed in one jurisdiction to practice cross-border issues, to have to be dexterous, not only with your cultural approaches and sensitivity, but also to the way you look at law. And so for me, it built there. It started in law school, and I really do say it's an access point. Now it's really phenomenal to see how many courses have burgeoned across academic institutions to offer courses in ADR and international ADR. And then frankly, it's happenstance. I do think there's a huge aspect of luck, allied with hard work, of course, that gets you into the positions that you do. And I just feel very, very lucky. And as well, I just want to thank all of our organizers for putting us on with all of these tiles. It is so fabulous to be in such good digitized company.
Thank you so much. Shall we move now to Sneha?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you once again for inviting a non-practitioner on this panel. Looking forward to sharing my thoughts. So thank you once again. My story, there was no plan. So it's just happened that I moved to Paris after studying law in India, and I was looking to study abroad, and I selected a master's program, which is not the traditional LLM, the 9 months one. It's in France, it's 2 years. So in the second year, I had to make, a selection of what specialization, for the specialty in the final year, and I happened to choose arbitration at that point of time because in the first year I ended up doing the Jessup moot court. So I haven't done the WIS, but obviously, I was exposed to how big of an event both moots are actually for all of the, students all across the world. And it just made me realize that law is such a restrictive field attached to the bar, where you're qualified. So my strategy suddenly became that I need to do something, a specialization that gives me mobility, because I don't know if I will live in Paris in long term or not. And then I was identifying international arbitration versus IP law versus private equity and finance, law. And then I chose arbitration because this wonderful field, offers mobility, which is quite rare for us lawyers, and so my choice, frankly speaking, comes from the mobility aspect. And then I ended up, obviously loving the field, and it's such a diverse, dynamic field with practitioners all across the world. And it truly feels like, the world, like now digitally, but when you have hearings and stuff like that, it's an opportunity to meet lots of people from, different languages and whatnot. So it's dynamic, and I love, I'm very happy that I made this choice. But yeah, no strategy at all. But yeah, today, like, I don't regret at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a number of follow-up questions, but I decided to bite my tongue and move from speaker to speaker so that students can ask you question afterwards. So I'm sorry, I will be passing now to third speaker, Maria Irene.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you for thinking of me and for involving me in this very interesting event. And thank you, Artemis, for the flattering introduction. Well, I think the key word is how you paved your way for arbitration. More or less like for my colleagues, I think mine was a little bit fruit of luck and coincidence. I also approached arbitration through the Vismut. And how it happened that I got interested in the Vismut is that I remember I studied at Bocconi University in Milan, and it's a very competitive environment. So I remember the selection process was on the fourth year of university, and at the beginning of the fourth year, we were chatting with my colleagues, etc. And one of them said, "Oh, I would love to try this," and I said, "Oh, sounds interesting. Maybe I'll try it too." And she told me straight in the face, "Oh, you're not good enough for that." And that's more or less the environment I grew up in 5 years. But I took it as a challenge and said, "Oh yes, well, let's see." That I finally got accepted in the team. And it was an amazing human experience. I loved every single moment. I love my team. We're still in great contact, and we're still very much a family, both with my team, the previous team, the new teams of my university. So that's really made me grow as a person and as a student. Then from there, I wanted to continue in arbitration. I studied in Milan. I thought I had passed the Milan bar, so I thought, why not looking for an internship here? And didn't really work out because whatever. Bocconi University is very famous for economics, so law firms in Milan were not really hiring us for litigation departments. So I see like how bias works also on students. And then I randomly sent my application to Alexis Moore that I met at a conference, and he called me back saying, "Well, listen, I like your CV and everything. Why don't you come and do an internship?" And he said in Paris. And I remember I was driving and I pulled on the brakes in the middle of the countryside and said, "Excuse me, where?" And we got in contact. We still are in very good contact with him. It's kind of my mentor. And I remember he paused for a second. So I had this 3 second of frozen silence. And he said, in French, of course, well, listen, mademoiselle, if you want to do international arbitration, you have to come to Paris, period. I was like, okay, because I applied for the Milan office, of course, so that was quite a surprise. And after that, nothing. I got an offer from White and Case, moved to White and Case, and after 4 years, I wanted to say something different. There was an opening at the ICC, and again, my mentor, Alexis Moore, became president of the ICC, so he said, listen, it's interesting here. Why don't you apply? I applied. I was very lucky. There was a position in the Swiss-Italian team. And then a client of White and Case came to look for me. We built Celine in Pregilo. And that's why I left the ICC with a broken heart, because I really miss my ICC colleagues. And the job was very interesting. But at some point you have to evolve. And that's why I'm in the construction field right now. So it was a series of very, very lucky coincidences, if I may. I really wanted to do arbitration. I loved it since when I did the Vismut, because it was a very young and dynamic environment. That was more or less a difference from what I saw before. It was an environment where professors and like the stars of arbitration were still young people. Whereas my university, commercial law was very important, but all these people were like old and dusty and gray. I was like, that's not possible, and very Italian. So I just love the environment, and I find it extremely intellectually challenging. So that's why.
Thank you very much, Maria. It is indeed now in the arbitration, especially work where you get a call from a big name, a future mentor. It really is something. So I wonder whether there is a similar experience for younger practitioners now. But now let me ask Monsieur Kabir what he thinks about practicing international arbitration outside France.
Thank you.
If you
No
could
one
tell
is
us
used
something
to French.
about it's just one word that I know in French, happens to be the good one. But if you could tell us about your way into the world of arbitration.
Sure. Let me begin by just acknowledging a common thread in all of our stories, that we all sort of got into arbitration by chance. And this is the key takeaway for the younger generation, for the students. Don't do that. Listen to events like this and maybe plan your careers a little better, because we were lucky we got into something we love and we enjoy. But when you're letting life control you, you can land up doing tax law, and for me that is the equivalent of death. That is like a death penalty, doing tax law, doing securities litigation or whatever. So I would encourage you, try to find your passion and follow it. Another common thread, what you will see pretty much in everybody who you see on the tile in front of you, is international. They're people who are likely in a different city. They're people who likely speak more than one language. And the common thread is that if you are internationally inclined, if you're internationally disposed, and you want to have a steady paycheck, international arbitration is likely going to be your golden ticket. You will do it and you will be happy doing it. So I wanted to do international law when I entered law school. I didn't know what that meant. 1 month before I was going to graduate, I realized, hey, I'm going to have to find a job now. Ramen cannot, I survived many years on ramen, but now I want to eat vegetables and fruits. And one of my professors actually told me, at that stage, think about arbitration. You can actually make a career out of it. It was not something I had focused on, but I really delved into it. And today, I would say I can't imagine myself doing anything else. And I would encourage all the students, think about it sooner. Think about it more consciously. Do the WIS, do all these other things that some of our speakers you've heard talk about, because it is a lot more competitive today than when I did it. But it's also a very exciting avenue if you're internationally inclined. And I'll stop here. I can go on, but I'll stop here.
Thank you very much. And to our students, Kabir is also very successful practitioner and academic, which is, of course, close to my heart and Artemis' heart. So I'm just I would like you to pay attention to this in your questions. All right, thank you very much. And Dian, if you could share your experience, what fascinated you in the world of alternative dispute resolution?
Thank you, Barbara. Well, first of all, I have to say that it's a great honor for me to participate in this panel as a ex-student of the Hague University. I have to relate something to what Kabir said. I mean, I followed my passion, and what really persuaded me to go into shipping was my family. I mean, my father, he's a seafarer, and then it goes within the whole family of seafarers working on ships. And I wanted to do rather on the legal side of shipping, and this is why I went to law school. And I have to admit that my favorite subject was arbitration when I studied at Hague University. And then the next step was, of course, my specialization in maritime law at the University of Southampton. Well, shipping is something very niche, and it involves not only arbitration, but all other methods of alternative dispute resolution. And being working for underwriters or for insurers, you're on a daily basis actually negotiating and adjudicating and working with lawyers and arbitrators on many and various cases. And that was actually, how can I say, my dream was to work on that particular aspect, to be exposed to as many as possible legal complexities on many legal and possible alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. Yeah, I think this is how I got here. And yeah, in shipping, basically, you have to you have to be rather good negotiator, because if you can settle your claim, or if you can negotiate on best terms before even going to an arbitration or to court, I mean, that would be the best of you. You spend less money on litigation, another litigation.
Thank you very much, Diane. I think it's really great to have you on this panel, and I'm sure that many students will have questions. We have many questions from our students in the minor, how to get into the field and what to do, especially if you are starting an international bachelor, not necessarily within a national jurisdiction. So we will be back with questions. But now, Artemis, the floor is yours, please, for the second question.
Thank you very much, and thank you for sharing the beginning of your journey with us, because this is a great tip in itself for the students and for ourselves as well. If I may move now to what is happening at the moment in international arbitration. So you have fantastic practices and very in-depth research at the same time in international arbitration. What is currently the most topical puzzle, the most important issue that you identify in the context of your practice or research in international arbitration, and how you would respond to this? And I think we can start perhaps in the reverse order. So Diane, would you like to start and tell us from your practice?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Artemis. Well, there are many current issues in shipping, starting with groundings. Perhaps you heard about the vessel that grounded in the Suez Canal. That's perhaps one of the very famous cases that is currently in the news. But let's not forget about COVID. There have been many cases with COVID, starting with crew-related cases. When you have a vessel, and first of all, when you have a vessel, that vessel needs crew, and that crew needs to board from somewhere. So say that we go to country X, and that country X will have a different laws and different procedures, changing every single day as to when and how new crew member can board the vessel and how the old can disembark the vessel. And then you have to negotiate with the authorities. Sometimes you have to hire or appoint third parties, to be able to convince the authorities that your member or your owner's vessel can board or disembark the crew. So this is very high topic at the moment. The crew issue. If hypothetically we have the situation where there are people with COVID on board, then the problem is that the vessel cannot berth the port, so it has to stay quarantined outside the port, or it's called at anchor. Then imagine you've got cargo of a couple of thousands of tons that's perhaps going to be deteriorated, and then you're going to have another problem with your cargo owners. So they're going to very likely sue you at the port of discharge for the cargo claim, and here you have another negotiation with the claimant. So imagine the situation. You have a case with the authorities where you're negotiating. You have a case with the cargo interest where you're negotiating the claim. I'm probably looking at the defenses, how to deny liability so that you don't pay anything for that claim. And then the vessel has got an owner, but the vessel has got a charterer. The charterer is the person who charters the vessel. And then you're going to have a third dispute between your owner and the charterer, or the person that hires the vessel. So you have three potential problems just because of COVID. And all that requires negotiation. Sometimes it may result to arbitration or litigation. And then this is something, the very hot topic at the moment. And it is, I mean, the last year proved to be quite difficult, but I think that now things kind of are getting settled. But probably we'll see the bigger picture by the end of this year or next year.
Thank you very much for sharing your views with us. And I can only imagine how different the set of skills that are necessary for negotiating with, for negotiations with the different, let's say, parties, including but not limited to public authorities, which are a very special category. And I can understand how interesting it can be and challenging at the same time. Thank you very much for that. Kabir, would you like to share with us your views?
Unmute yourself, right? The global saying for 2020 and 2021. Look, I'll flag a couple of issues, but I won't delve in them because, Sneha and Rekha will also be talking about some of these things. But for me, the big challenge that I see in international arbitration is that we need to be thinking about broader social issues. And two things that I will flag. One of them that I will flag is international arbitration needs to be international. And it doesn't always appear to be the case, and that is a problem. Now, I'll just flag two components there. One problem we see is that there is no representation the way one would expect when it comes to gender. That's a very serious problem. If you look at the tiles in front of us, there are more women than men. And while we are making strides, we should acknowledge that there is a positive impetus happening. It should be a lot better. This should not be a hard or a controversial point. So gender, and again, we need to make sure that at least at the top, international arbitration represents its constituents. That is, it should not be the proverbial, we should disregard this term male, pale, and stale. But that idea that, we need to have more Africans, we need to have more Latin Americans, we need to have more women of color, we need to have more linguistic diversity. We need to see that. The other issue, I'll get in and out just in the interest of time, we need to think about our carbon footprint. Arbitration lawyers, like lawyers at large, love paper. We're destroying Brazilian rainforests with each arbitration filing. And that is not sustainable. We cannot, in the future, continue doing things the way we have done it. Now, some of this for the younger generation, they're going to hear this and say, obviously. We don't need to sell the younger people on diversity or the environment the way you have to with my generation, but this is a problem. I'll stop here because I know other people will have very interesting things to say, but I do flag these as two things for us to think about.
Thank you very much for these observations, Kabir. And I'm glad to see that you are more optimistic about the new generation, perhaps in the terms of both issues of diversity, but also in terms of being more environmentally cautious. I was wondering from your experience if you think that the new generation is going to be blind to a certain extent, if I may use this word, in terms of as far as bias is concerned in relation to race, gender, color of skin, color of eyes, color of hair. I mean, it is unthinkable why we would why would we pick a counsel or an arbitrator or a professor based on the color of the skin or the gender and not on the color of the hair. We think that this is funny, but it is equally funny to use this type of criteria, but unfortunately we use them. But thank you for sharing your optimism with us, and we will revert with more questions about the fantastic initiatives that you are part of. Thank you so much. Maria Heren, would you like to share your views with us?
Well, two aspects. I would first pick what has just been said, and then we'll add something from the construction industry, if I may. So, speaking about diversity, of course, we need it. I remember, sorry to go back to him, but he's my mentor, and I really appreciate what he does. But I remember Alexis Moore when he became president of the ICC. So before I joined, when I was still at White & Case, he made an amazing inauguration speech saying that he would have really promoted a culture of diversity. And as you know, it's only under his mandate that finally the court members were exactly 50% female, 50% men. First time in history, 2020, a little bit late, but no, sorry, 2018, yeah. So kudos to him, if I may. Also, if you look at the regional directors and council, finally the ICC has more diversity. I mean, you surely know Abhinav, who unfortunately is leaving his position for the Southeast Asia, but now Diamana, who is of course of African origin, has just been promoted as a regional director for Africa for the ICC. The council in Asia, in Singapore and Hong Kong, are locals. They're not white Western Europeans or North America just put down there to colonize the region. So that's, I think, it's something very, very important. And I can tell you that living it from inside, on the side of arbitrator's appointment, when it's up to the secretariat to propose some candidates to the court for the appointment, we have very clear and strict instructions on how to construct the list of potential candidates. So at least half of the list must be composed by women, to the extent possible, of course, and of course respect basically the identity of the case. I had a very big case related to Africa, and we struggle a bit, but we find a very good African president for the case. It was a major construction case. So I have to say, the ICC, at least it's the only institution I can talk about because I worked in it. So I can tell you that it's making an effort towards that. Carbon print, sure. I'm very happy to see that some parties are finally rebelling against the arbitrators asking to print everything. When I started working at the White & Case, I remember the last filing of a case that then went public. It was the Finnish nuclear plant. We had 120,000 exhibits, and we had to print everything for the 3 arbitrators. I remember that basically all of White & Case in Plasma and Dom was full of cartons, and that's insane. But even worse, if I may, we could knock on the door of the ICJ, because apparently someone who works at the PCA, so same palace, of course, in The Hague, as you all know, all the judges needs 2 copies of every single case. And the judges are how many? 17? Just imagine, they told me that there are cargoes entering the Peace Palace every time there is a case. So I completely agree with you that parties probably first has to educate arbitrators on this specific topic, and sometimes arbitrators have to restrict parties from printing an Amazonian forest, as you said. Now, something I would like to add on my specific side, as we briefly discussed it, it's also that sometimes, I work in a very technical environment where claims are highly technical. And also when I was at White & Case, I realized sometimes that the interns we had the chance to work with, they were lacking the specific technical knowledge. You don't study FIDI contracts at university usually. No, I'm not saying that construction arbitration is sexy. We constantly have fights with my boyfriend who does PIL, which is of course more intellectually sexy if you want. Which one is better? But I found construction very interesting on my personal opinion. And I think that sometimes a little bit more specialization in education might help you in your career. I mean, if you don't like construction, be it energy, I love the price pricing arbitration I had the chance to work on. But if you specialize a bit in your niche, whenever you find one, might help you to get your first job. Then if you want to change, you change. Again, I started in energy, so something completely different. And then all of a sudden I started doing construction. So it's not that then it's set in stone and you will never be able to change specialization, but it can help. That's it.
Thank you very much for sharing all these very interesting observations. I will also refrain myself from asking too many questions to all of you because we want the students to have the floor. But thank you for mentioning also the specialization issue because some students are wondering, is it better to have a specialized master degree in international arbitration, let's say, or it is better to go for a specialized course in energy construction, in something totally different to international arbitration, but to a field that is going to be useful for us in the context of practicing arbitration? But I guess it's going to be a question that all of you will need to answer later. So, but thank you very much for all your observations. And now I would like to move to Sneha, and I would also like to mention to everyone that unfortunately we cannot have her for the second hour because of her commitments with the arbitration happy hour, which is the new big thing in the international arbitration virtual community. So if you have any questions for her, please try to add them to the chat now. Thank you very much. Sneha, could you please share your views with us?
Yes, thank you. And everyone can contact me, on LinkedIn if I'm not able to answer during the time that we have. So feel free to reach out. We've discussed diversity, we've discussed climate. I would like to touch upon innovation because I think legal industry is old school and lawyers are like thinking about how can I bill more hours and win more cases. But I think innovation is also important, something that we all need to adapt, accept, and not see it as a threat because it's not going to affect, your billing hours or like as a student you don't have them, but when you become an associate, don't see technology as a threat to your billing hours because you will save time, but you can get more cases. So in the end, there's no issue because, and that's the thing that on my mind, if you from Yusmundi's perspective as well, like the reason why I left practice because I was totally fascinated by innovation and innovation in particularly in the legal industry. And I found, luckily, I lived in Paris and Yusmundi is also Paris based, so I had the very fortunate to find this opportunity to work now on the legal tech side. And, I mean, innovation, we try to also reflect all of the issues that we mentioned. Diversity, I think Yusmundi also has a big role to play, using innovation to inject diversity in the selection of arbitrators, finding counsel, and we try to, so innovation also doesn't mean that sit in one room and then just in your lab and innovation lab and then just invent. I think it's very important to look what's going on in the market, in this context, international arbitration, and you have to reflect innovation and adapt your innovation according to the current happenings of the field. So speaking of diversity, we made sure at Yusmundi that the directory that we have, not just for arbitrators. Now, recently, we also added council, we are adding states as well, we are adding experts, all the players basically that you have in international arbitration. And we introduce filters because we heard where people reached out to us. We care about diversity. I don't know anyone in Brazil. Who can I nominate from Brazil? I don't speak Portuguese, and so people told realistic problems while executing the idea of injecting diversity in arbitration. So we introduced, filters. Gender is also an issue, so we all added like a gender filter as well, so that now if anyone complains that I cannot find a Mexican arbitrator, it's a problem that like you're not looking for the right tools and not using innovation to address all of these issues. For the same for climate change as well. The awards are very long, and the annexes. I also remember in my law firm we had a printing department, and they were like the mafia of the law firm. You had to like beg them, like, can you please print this entire lot. It's like 5 kilo of paper, probably more. So use digital tools, and that doesn't mean just use Mundi. There's tons of electronic ways of saving, caring for environment, and virtual hearings are one of the things that I like out of this pandemic, that the positive side, that the access to arbitration has become now, it's virtual, and you can practically save money and do an arbitration for your dispute. So yeah, think about innovation, and obviously, if you ever have any idea with which Usmundi can help, you can reach out to me, and we can think about it, because all of the tools that we made at Usmundi, they were user feedback based. ISER happened, the whole conflict of interest, and we introduced conflict checker, and now you can avoid conflicts of interest. So very big on innovation. It's always on my mind, and I make sure to read what's going on, not just in arbitration but in legal technology as a field. It's massive. So I highly recommend subscribing to legal tech blogs, and those kind of news are very important to keep up with, as just a matter of knowledge, industry knowledge, and it's also a great career option, because I everything that I did in the past, now I am making. Not me alone, but with Usmundi's product team, we are making tools, and we have so many ex-lawyers who practice law for 10 years in big law firms, and they all quit to be on the innovation side. So don't be afraid to adopt innovation and also work in innovation. It's a wonderful field, and fast moving, and as interesting as international as arbitration as well. We have 17 nationalities in our team. I just hired someone from Armenia in my team, and it's super global and very arbitration kind of atmosphere when you work, I think, in an international legal tech company. So innovation, that's what's on my mind always. Thank you.
Thank you very much for highlighting the specific topic, because especially students and young practitioners are a bit afraid that, oh my God, the more artificial intelligence we have, the less jobs will be out there for the very young practitioners, whereas it's not the case. And we have many opportunities that arise out of this legal tech saga that is increasing, that has been increasing. So thank you very much for highlighting this point. And I've also been impressed with your cooperation with London, very young arbitration practitioners, and with the fact that you offer opportunities for publication to very young practitioners and not only to senior ones. So I see that Usmundi is really trying to be close to lawyers of different, ages, gender, national backgrounds, etc. So thank you for that. And last but not least, Rika, would you like to share your views with us? Thank you.
Sure. For fear of echoing, I think a lot of what has already been said quite eloquently. I'll say that a theme that has been on my mind a lot is this idea of community inclusion, particularly important during the pandemic, where access and inclusion was difficult. And it hit, I think, younger practitioners harder, where it used to be that you could all be in a hearing room and you got visibility, less so on tiles when you're doing a remote hearing. And so it's been really fabulous to see so many different groups come into the fold during the pandemic to try to address gaps in access. And so that, I think, has been really special to make our community stronger as a whole. Real being one aspect of this, to try to talk about racial equality against a backdrop of in the US, it started with us talking about issues that were more anchored in police brutality and this idea of how do you talk about race across dimensions. But in truth, that's only one group. There are so many groups. And I've been so impressed by all of the young groups that have formed and the very young groups that have formed just as a means to build their community. Another way to think about inclusion, community inclusion, is the proliferation of all of these ESG standards, right? To think about societal impact of cross-border business and how are corporates getting more involved to try to take a stand and think about it. Inclusion also comes in the form of innovation, as Sneha was talking about, because we have to, hold each other's hands and bring everyone into the modern era. Some will do it kicking and screaming, but frankly, if you don't build that dexterity now, you will get left behind, full stop. And so we owe it to ourselves, from the littlest of things to the biggest of things, little tips and tricks that we use on our own virtual platforms to share that knowledge and build an intel so that we all do it better together. And so I encourage all of the students tuning in. Now is a really interesting time for you all to be coming into the practice. It's a time when you have access to reach out to anybody, be it the person that you're studying who has drafted your textbook, to somebody that you want to get to know. And more times than not, if you write them, they will invite you for a remote coffee. It's easy if you can figure out the time zone. It is affordable because everyone brings their own. And you really get a chance to meet so many different people. So don't be shy about making these connections. Feel free to reach out, figure out a commonality of why. But I just think nowadays we're in really connecting in hyperspeed. And so just take the opportunity, because people, I think even more so, are looking for connections at all practice levels. And I think people are making time to connect. So community inclusion.
Thank you very much for this, Riha. And I think that the New York International Arbitration Center has been doing a number of things towards this direction. I mean, I felt very privileged that I could participate in the drinks that you organized, whereas in real life I would have never been able, to travel to New York just for the drinks or for the fantastic webinars that you organized. It doesn't matter that sometimes here in my time zone, it may be midnight or after midnight. I mean, I have the chance to listen to fantastic practitioners from all over the world, and it's not something that I would have been able to do in real life. So thank you so much for this, and the fantastic newsletter that you prepare for all those who subscribe. It's like a one-stop shop for all the events and all the things that are happening. And a huge thank you, because it is not limited to what is happening in New York, but you really try to figure out what is happening in the international arbitration arena in general in the world. And thank you very much for that. Cautious of time, I think I would like to highlight one point that all of you mentioned, the issue of diversity and inclusion, and you offered specific examples, but I would like to learn more about one of the projects, one of the initiatives that, if I'm not mistaken, was born in January, and it is about REAL, so racial equality for lawyers. How did you come up with this idea? What was the trigger for this project? And why do you think that now in 2021, this is the time for real? So, anyone who would like to start? I don't know.
Kabir, just so you all know what's happening in the background here, Kabir is unmuting and going, Reka, take this question and then pass the microphone to Sneha. So I will just offer very briefly and pass the mic, because I think this is important. And I hinted to it, I guess, earlier, but you know, we all come into this space because we love international law and connecting with international people, right? The trouble is, for some reason, we don't always talk about race, either because it's a maligning factor if somebody identifies what their race is, depending on the jurisdiction. And what's also been interesting to see is when race has come up as a topic on the interwebs, right, on different chats and blogs, it immediately becomes polarizing, right? You're either for it or against it, and whatever the topic presented. But it was a demonstration that when you have to be reminded of civility when you're having these conversations, what is wrong with our community? We are advocates by nature. We are used to seeing opposing counsel, the same folks where we disagree to the benefit of supporting our client's case. And yet, when it comes to certain topics, including race, including intersectionality and diversity issues, we don't always maintain our politeness. We can't seem to talk about it in spite of being advocates, and diction, language, being our weapon, or the thing that buttresses us in our personalities. And so frankly, that's why, why real, why now? Well, it was ripe. Things are happening that are dividing us across the world, and particularly in the pandemic, right? Could it have come earlier? Sure. But the trouble will be, in truth, when we talk about race, and REAL is a global organization that launched in January, when you talk about race, you can't just immediately talk about it on a global level. We have to start local, regional. We have to understand and map the differences on conversations about race with endemic issues, the way language narrates racial issues, right? And then go broad scope. And so the plan really for REAL is to do that in sort of localized pods. We couldn't do it without, frankly, the help of a really international steering committee, ambassadors, members and allies who really will be the driving force of REAL, to start conversations, to create safe spaces, and really just pushing this idea that everyone is welcome. However you choose to self-identify for any group, figure it out and leave your mark. Whether it's REAL, whether it's some other group, it doesn't matter, right? Agnostic on the group, but pick one to the students and then commit your time, right? Don't be the passive observer who joins sessions with camera off, muting, you're doing 75 things in the background trying to multitask. That's not how you're going to build your community. And the best part about our community is that it exists, the sport community. But I'll pause there and pass the mic, I think, to Sneha and then maybe to Kabir if everyone agrees.
I'll hop on because I need to go like in 4 minutes. I will share my thoughts as to why I decided to become part of REAL, because okay, like there is an initiative, and now why I joined it. To be quite frank with you, like I do not practice law I don't practice law at all now, but when I worked as an associate, I lived abroad and in a foreign jurisdiction, and I, as a woman of color, foreigner, non-French, and all kinds of different issues, I kind of felt that there was nothing going on in terms of, if something is bad and you need to address it, drive the dialogue. And as soon as I saw REAL was born, I knew I wanted to be part of it. So I reached out and I said, how can I help you? Like, I want to be part of this initiative. And so, yeah, I mean, it's an important initiative addressing a very, the very real issue that exists in international arbitration. And what Kabir said, like in the beginning, that arbitration, it has to be international. And then the definition, there's lots of different aspects and highlighting just on the achievements of real, like, the access to different events, and we've organized different scholarships of all of the paid events and whatnot. So I feel very strongly about this initiative. It's not just a dialogue, it's also about actions, and I think that's what makes it a strong initiative. And anyone interested who would like to be part of this movement, all you have to do is reach out to one of us, and then we'll figure it out from there. And I will also take my leave from here. Thank you very much once again, and good luck for the rest of the discussion. And don't hesitate to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd love to, answer questions if I can help. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Neha. Good luck. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you. And now, Kabir, would you like to share with us your views about REAL and the steps forward for this fantastic initiative?
Sure, I'll just make a very brief comment to everybody. I think this is particularly, significant for students. One of our goals, the two big goals for us, we call it the two A's. It's access and advocacy. For students, this will be very relevant because if you are students like most students are, money is an issue. And this is where we see our role stepping in. We want to create avenues for access, to join this club, to join this practice. So far, we have given about 30 different scholarships. People can attend events, attend programs for free. And we would encourage all of you, take a look at these. There have been advocacy programs for women. That was a program we were able to give 5 scholarships. Columbia Law School is doing an arbitration 3-week program. It's $2,000. That is often out of the reach of most students. Again, we have 2 scholarships for free. So look at it. It's a free to join organization. Again, the same goal of access. If we're going to put even $10, that may be $10 for me to eat food versus $10 for me to join an organization. We shouldn't put you in that situation. It is free to join. We think we can help make our system better. If you are young, if you are bright and you have ideas, that's how we make a difference. Bright people with ideas. So share your ideas. Let's try to do something to make our system more inclusive. I'll stop here, but I hopefully this resonates with the students.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing these very specific examples. And we all benefit from that because actually you mentioned a very good example, that specific training that the cost is around is perhaps more than the monthly salary of a junior lawyer in certain jurisdictions. So it is problematic, and this is a very real example of access that is necessary for everyone. And thank you very much for this. If I may move now to Maria, Irene, how did you come with this idea of founding an organization in Italy about young arbitration practitioners? Because Rika started before mentioning that we need to start on a local level before we try to figure out what needs to be done in the global picture. So would you like to share your views with us, Maria?
I will try to be diplomatic because it was not easy. And we created a little tsunami in the Italian community with that. I would pick up on what Kabir just said, and we created that because we were young and hungry. In Italy, there were, and this is facts, and I don't think that anyone can deny that. In Italy, as in every other country, there was the AIA, the Italian Association for Arbitration. That was a little bit, with all the due respect, stagnating for years. So a group of semi-young colleagues founded Arbit, which was surely younger, surely more active, organizing conferences, etc. Problem is that this group of young colleagues became very, very quickly above 40. And Arbit was not an association, was a closed forum. And I'm sorry to say that, and whoever disagrees, I'm happy to take the questions, but it was a closed forum, and us, the below 40, were not allowed to have a forum for ourselves. So after trying to, be included, etc., we decided to found our own thing. And again, I don't want to reveal the details because it's politically delicate, but we said, listen, we are all established practitioners. The other four co-founder together with me, one is Michele Podesta at GKK, so very well-established practitioner who supported us a lot. Then there are other three colleagues in Italy, and I was in Paris. And little by little, we managed to convince the more senior, some of the very illuminated, more senior colleagues that this was necessary. And of course, when we founded the association, we strictly adhered to the idea that it must have been for free, because it was for students, for anyone who was young and, yes, did not have to choose between using, Italy can be quite expensive, like 200 euros per year for an association, or do something different. So it had to be absolutely free. It had to be absolutely inclusive. So there is no way we can refuse anyone. It's an open association. We send an email and you're registered. And that's it. We just, I don't want to sound aggressive because I'm a pacifist inside, but we revolted against the system that was established by the more senior generation. Yeah, so I think that this can be I want to say an example, but something you want to think about when you're young. Even if the most senior colleagues told you, you cannot do that, or tell you, if you do that, you will never find a job in this country, because this happened, true story, okay? Don't be discouraged, because you will find allies, you will find friends, you will find colleagues who will help you and support you. And yeah, you just have to adhere to your morals and create a world as you want it to be. It's open and inclusive for everyone. So that's why we did it. And it's the first, and for the time being, the only below 40 association for Italian practitioners. Completely free, as I said, completely inclusive. So that's why.
Thank you very much for this. And could you also mention how this idea for the young construction lawyers came up in Paris? You also are responsible for this initiative as well.
Yeah, that was funny. I was at White and Case, late night filing as usual, like 4 a.m. probably. I was in the cafeteria with a friend of mine who and colleague who worked a lot in the Emirates for a few years, and we were discussing. I don't know why we discussed the Vismut, and he asked me, "What is a Vismut?" I said, "Oh, well, fake mock case about commercial arbitration." This friend of mine is now is back in Dubai and is a very good construction practitioner. And he said, "Well, why commercial? Construction is the field that will always bring bread to the table. We should do a moot on construction cases." And we never managed to do that because we really taken up in our careers. But before doing that, we said, okay, instead of doing a moot, which is kind of difficult sometimes to organize, think about the case, etc., why don't we found an association for young practitioners specialized in this field? And this resonates a bit with the idea that I told you before, that sometimes White and Case in Paris, they have a lot of construction cases, but not only White and Case. There are many Parisian firms that are specialized in arbitration and have big construction cases. And it's true, when you receive the interns, a few of them have an understanding of how a construction dispute work, what are FIDIC contracts, etc. So we said, listen, why not creating this little forum? We're now in Paris, and then we created relationship with Astra, for example, in the UK, another association around the world, another one in the Emirates, just to create a forum for young students and young practitioners to discuss about construction topic and create a bit of awareness, and hoping that students, when they move their first steps in the profession, can shine a little bit more maybe and have a little bit more knowledge about this field that someone don't like, someone like me pretty much like. So, but still, it's an asset. You never know. It can be an asset to find your first job. So that's why we did it.
Thank you very much, Maria, and thank you for your inspiring work on this, and thank you very much, Kabir, for sharing the links. These are fantastic opportunities, and yeah, they've been setting a very good example for everyone. Diane, as a young practitioner who comes from a country and then moves to a different country to study, and then to a third country to study and work, have you experienced any issues of discrimination? Have any of these societies that have been set up helped you in this process? Have you participated in mentoring programs that perhaps they helped you, official or unofficial?
Well, in general, not really. At least I can't recall any specific moments where I may have felt discriminated or no, I don't think so. But I think in general, when you're coming from a one country, I mean, I'm myself Bulgarian. I studied in the Netherlands, and then I moved to the UK. And then when I started my career here in the UK, of course, when you're entering the legal market, then the law firms, they have their own, each and every law firm, they have one set of thinking, kind of the same. The people that work in one company, they're more or less the same, within the same way of thinking. And it's about how compatible you actually with the team, and how can you understand the team and how we can work together. I don't think that there would be, or there was any discrimination on race or nationality. I think what really matters is how how you can work, and how you actually are doing your job. At least here for London, for the UK, what I have seen and what I have witnessed, this is for now has been the case, at least in my particular situation. And in the Japan club, I have to say we are also very diverse. I mean, we have another claims handler who is from Venezuela. It's a lady, and then the managers are English, and then our bosses are Japanese. I mean, it's a very international structure in general. And frankly, I haven't witnessed or experienced any discrimination so far, which is quite welcoming and quite nice. I heard a lot of you speaking about environmental issues, which are very important, of course. I will not speak about the shipping environment because there are many. We can pick their nights, if not more, about it. But in terms of office structure, I do remember when I joined, because you mentioned law firms, they have tons of paper printing within the printing departments, etc., etc. So we have the policy here when we have everything electronically, so everything is on a file. We rarely print anything. When I joined, for me that was a quite it was hard for me to adjust to this, because I'm used to the lawyer way of thinking, everything printed and then doing page by page. So it was hard to switch to the digital version of everything. But with time, everything got adjusted.
Thank you very much for sharing your views. And on this optimistic note, I will pass the floor to Barbara. Please, the floor.
Thank you very much, Artemis, and apologies, I have some problems with my connection, but I think we're lucky at this very moment. So I will be fast asking the question. I will move to more career-oriented question or advice regarding the advice for our students, but I will frame it in a context of the time machine. So if all of you if you had a time machine, and if you were to give yourself an advice when you were starting your career, knowing everything what you know now, experiencing pandemic and all the challenges that the profession faces now, or maybe opportunities, what advice would you give to yourself? And maybe we could start with Rika.
always know in the first instance how to unmute. Advice. I think it's something that I followed, and so more so, don't be afraid to jump into new experiences, especially ones that are uncharted. I say that because some years back, I was asked if I would be interested to become executive director of NIAC, the center that I now run. And I said, what is it? What do you do? In the first instance, we're a hearing center. In the second instance, we are a means to talk about New York as a seat, application of New York commercial law, reps and warranties that go into that, why international parties choose to apply New York law. And then, of course, New York is a venue. And I said, it's going to be really law adjacent. Do I want to do that rather than go back into practice? And one of my board members said, Reka, it's an opportunity. It is what you make of it. So if you only, if you consider it as law adjacent, then that's what you will make of it. If you believe that you could be the epicenter and you can create a community, that's what you will do too. But it's all about your perspective and how broad or narrow you choose to define your role. And I think that's true of anything, right? So for me, it really became about building a community. And I am so thrilled that I took the chance to jump into this sort of unknown, what is it, law adjacent role. And I think because of it, I've been able to do a lot of academic and other work through connections I've met. So never be afraid to jump. Things in the first instance, they can always be temporary or they can be permanent. It's really your perspective, but there's always a lot of shifts that you can make, and pivots, a word that I think we hear a lot right now during the pandemic, pivots. So never be scared to jump. You never know where you may end up.
Thank you very much. I was about to ask Kabir now, so sorry that I didn't mention this before you mute.
Sure.
The microphone.
Let me just pick off where Reka left off, because I think that is really good advice. And I think for students, who are figuring themselves out, let me just piggyback of that and say, embrace your uniqueness, embrace your difference, embrace your craziness, embrace your idiosyncrasies. That's what makes you unique. That's what makes you stand out. Very often we're told, do this to be successful. And take that advice in stride, but never do it at the cost of you trying to hide who you are. Because if you're trying to suppress something that makes you unique, you are not going to be true. You're not going to be satisfied. People around you can figure it out. So if you speak with an accent, embrace it. If you are somebody who likes to wear jazzy, colorful clothes, embrace it. If you speak with your hands everywhere like I do, and everyone has always told me, put your hands underneath and sit still, that's not me. Embrace your craziness, embrace your idiosyncrasies. That's what will make you special. That's what's going to make, at the end of the day, we are selling ourselves as lawyers. That's what's going to make you unique. So advice that I will give you, which I will tell you in the same vein, feel free to discard, but embrace the craziness. And I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Kabir. And I think in this context, we have a question that I will already read now, and then I will still stick to the original one, depending, of course, on the speakers, which one they would like to answer. So we have a question from Cohen, who is asking about a bigger or biggest setback in your career, and how would you suggest starting lawyers deal with their own struggles early on? So Kabir already gave us some advice to embrace our shortcomings, perhaps, but what about others? Could you probably respond to this or give any other advice to yourself from the perspective of contemporary times? So maybe Dian.
there will be many ups and downs in every way. I mean, thinking about myself, of course, there are good moments and bad moments, but I think that the most important thing is just to know what you really want from yourself and to go for it and never to give up. Speaking so inspirationally, but yes, just know what you want to do and go for it. There will be many bumps in the road, but I think that it wouldn't be the case if there aren't any. So I mean, challenges are challenges to be met there and to be overcome. And the more challenges we overcome, we get better eventually. So what my advice would be just proceed forward, just whatever the challenge is.
Thank you very much, Diane. Maria Irene, would you like to respond from your perspective?
Well, absolutely. On struggles, I would say just be creative, but be faithful to your objectives. Like I told you, when I graduated in 2012, the government in Italy just enacted, the parliament in Italy just enacted the reform of the judicial professions reform. And basically, law firms didn't know how to hire interns. They didn't know for how long. It was completely unclear. And in addition to it, so they were not hiring. In addition to that, as I told you, I had this handicap that in Milan, we were known to be great corporate lawyers, but terrible litigators, which is a bias that I completely disagree with, but I'm opt to be a demonstration of that. So it was really difficult for me. I struggled for 6 months. I couldn't find a job in Milan, notwithstanding I came from a pretty decent university. I couldn't find a job. I had to go back home. You know what I did? I helped my mother. She's a lawyer as well. I was very lucky. She had a very nice case in front of the administrative state council. So not exactly what I wanted to do, right? It was not arbitration. But at least I learned a lot from that 6-month experience. And I continued applying for arbitration department all over Europe. See, in the end, I had my chance. I had opportunities to join firms in Milan in corporate department, etc. And I'm not saying they're worse than what I'm doing. It's just that I didn't want to do that. So even though it meant for me to leave Milan and go back home living with my parents for 6 months, which was not funny, trust me, but after being used to work and live alone in another city, I did it because I did not want to settle for something that was not my goal. So I tried to stay strong and waited for my occasion. So that's it. And after that, honestly, when you find a spiral, like a spot of occasion, just take it, whatever it is. Because really, I hope to start working in Milan. And then this man called me saying, come to Paris. And I was like, what? Yes, I knew the city a little bit, but as a tourist, right? It's not a city that no, it's not true. I studied there for a few months, but still, I mean, it was not a city where I lived for real. And so I took it, the opportunity. It was at the beginning, just the leadership for 2 months with Alexis Moore and his team. And then they extended until 8 months. And then after that, I said, okay, I'm done. I go back to Milan. Then I randomly received the White & Case offer. So I stayed longer. And also, at White & Case, it was amazing, but it's a quite, the working hours are sometimes a bit heavy. And even there, I had to be creative and saying, listen, I love these people and I love this job, but I also want a little bit of work-life balance. So let's find something else. And the ICC was amazing because then after that, I went to the company. And being in-house and knowing the ICC practice, the institutional practice, it's so important. And they really value me there. Again, that was a little struggle as well, because trust me, going from White & Case salary to the ICC salary in Paris, that is a very expensive city, was not always easy. But, I had my savings. I managed to do what I had to do. And I think it was a good investment. So everyone has struggles. Everyone has ups and downs. And I had a few moments of ups and downs. But if you keep being faithful to your goal, to what you like, to what really passionate you, no struggle will be really heavy on your shoulders. So that's my point.
Thank you very much. It's always difficult now to make all these choices. Of course, international arbitration gives us a lot of opportunities and flexibility. That being said, when we are also looking for stability, it can be a challenge. Although it always makes professional lives, I think, more interesting because there is many options for travel in the context of hearings. I think I would like to give the floor now because I know that Rika and Kabir need to go very soon. So I would like to also give the floor to Hannah and Mariuka regarding questions from the chat.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you for all of the interesting discussions. It's very insightful. And I see we have one question from Atuli in the chat of how would you see the usage of blockchain technology in arbitration in near future? Do you see this connection, and is there possible careers opportunities related to the IT, to the blockchain?
The short answer to this is yes. Technology is going to give rise to new legal challenges. We're going to have to embrace it. I have to confess, as an old fuddy-duddy, I have not understood blockchain technology. But there are very prominent people in this field. Sophie Nappert, interestingly, and this is a great example again of how we can just overcome stereotypes. All the blockchain technology arbitration practitioners that are prominent are all women, right? And that's, I think, a beautiful sign that you see again. We are flying in the face of gender stereotypes. But there are these very prominent thinkers, Kathleen Paisley, Sophie Nappert, who've done some very exciting work in blockchain technology. The reality of the day is all these emerging areas, right? Think about this, think about cryptocurrencies, think about any of these modern developments are going to change the way we are doing things. So yes, if you understand these areas of law, you find a new, unique niche for yourself, embrace it. So Atuli, go for it, is what I'm going to suggest.
Perfect, thank you. And also I have one question from myself, because we talked a lot about the problems in arbitration, about the inclusivity, about the starting the career and getting into this field. And I wanted to ask whether throughout the years where you work in this field, you see any improvements on the bright side, if you see that the initiatives like RIA already work and make it maybe a bit easier for coming students and for us to get into this field without such a problems as you described.
Let me give a couple of answers. One answer, are things getting better? I think the answer is undoubtedly yes. But let me just highlight a broader issue. The problems we are talking about are not unique to arbitration. They are problems in society that impact everything. Sexism is not unique to arbitration. Sexism is a problem of society. We are a reflection of society. So to that extent, the battles we are fighting are not battles just for arbitration. They are battles of the way we think. They're battles of the way we see reality. So to that extent, the struggle is, things are getting better, but the struggle is still a real one. We're fighting against 5,000 years of people doing things a certain way and assigning gender roles or assigning racial roles. And that is the challenge for us, right? We have to overcome something that has happened for a very long time. But don't let that weigh you down or let you think that, oh my God, the world is collapsing. No, we must all try and be positive, optimistic, and try to make things better, right? As Maria gave examples, looking at the realities in construction, looking at the realities in Italy, right? Try wherever you can, when you identify a problem, to do something about it. That in addition to making a difference, is empowering. You are taking a problem within your control. And, I would just encourage you, like how she identified two examples, do this. See things in your reality, try to embrace it and see even a small difference you are making is at the end of the day chipping at a broader problem. So I'll stop here, but be optimistic and proud.
Kabir, if I may add to this, I think still that you are completely right. However, in international arbitration, the change is coming so slow. I think that in comparison to other fields, you can really tell that the status quo is there, and it's very hard to blow this wind of change. So recently, we also had a class in our arbitration minor to our students who are very diverse. Our student body is very diverse at the Hague University, especially in the international and European Bachelor of Law. And students were really surprised when I put together all these problems regarding diversity in international arbitration. They were very surprised that these problems can still exist. So I sometimes wonder for those of us who are used to international fields so much and are working in or want to work in international arbitration, how attractive international arbitration remains to new generations to whom diversity is a given. I think there are many students who would share this concern, but I wouldn't like to stop you, Kabir and Rika. If you need to leave us, please, I know that you are teaching Artemis, let us know about it. So feel free to abandon us anytime you wish. And thank you so much for your contributions. We really learned a lot, and thank you for all your fantastic work in the field of international arbitration, and we hope to stay in touch with you and keep up with the good work. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
And if I could just follow up on the recent comment, on the last comment with maybe Maria and Dian, what is your advice regarding the next steps, educational steps for our students? So we are speaking today with bachelor students of an international program, and I very often get questions from students, what shall we do next if we want to work in international arbitration? So, and we know, traditionally speaking, that law firms would always look for prestigious educational backgrounds and schools to check the boxes during the hiring procedure too. So would you advise our students to go back also to their home countries and qualify as lawyers to work in international arbitration or dispute resolution? Or do you think there is a path to continue the development at international level? Maybe Dian, can we start with you, and then Maria Ri?
Yeah. But thank you for the question. Well, I know that many of the students who have that sort of question, what they can do after they graduate, perhaps from the Hague University, what's next? If I want to be, if I want to work in alternative dispute resolution, how can I get there? I mean, the most important thing is, as a person or as a student, you really need to know what you want to do after you graduate, and then you really need to do your bits of research. If that what you want to do is provided in Europe or in the States or anywhere else, perhaps you have to explore the options how you can go there and how you can get those qualifications but you also need to think beyond what when you have the qualifications, what's after. I mean, those are the questions that need to be considered very carefully. Not only to think about not only a master's and then after a master's I will get what I want. I mean, sometimes it doesn't really work that way. You need to think a bit beyond that. And what's after the master degree? Because then once you get your master, then you're entering the working, the legal market, and it's very competitive. I mean, I have to be honest with you, it's really very competitive. And imagine you have so many law firms, but then you're competing with local law graduates. For example, if you here in the UK, when I was applying for jobs back then, you would be competing with the UK legal graduates, and you need to really stand out from those. And I think that would be the same case even if you were in another country. So whether you would go back to your country or whether you can go to a third country, that would truly depend on what you want to do with your career and whether with the next step of your career, say you've got the master's, whether you can really qualify and proceed further. So as it happens, well, I graduated from the Hague University and then I obtained my master's, and I didn't find any difficulties then going to a law firm here in the UK. You prepare your CV and then you apply, and then is the interview procedure, is the interview steps, and it is there where you have to prove yourself, where you have to show the law firms and the partners that you're going to be working for what you can do and what you can bring to that law firm. So the question then, I mean, the answer would be, I mean, whether you should go back to your country, that would really depend on what you want to do next. If you want to work something that can be done in your country, then perhaps that would be the option you should take. Or if what you want to do can be done or worked in another country, then you may be looking for alternatives or options there. But then also, when you go there, you need to research whether with the qualifications already you've obtained or you're going to obtain, whether you would be able to secure a job placement. And most of the times it works, but you would need to have internships. Unfortunately, you need to have some more experience after the master's degree. So you would need to take internships, be they paid or unpaid internships. Any experience counts. Just remember this very well. Any experience counts, because when you go on the table and they start interviewing you, you have to really demonstrate what you've done and what you can do. And this is what really counts: the experience, the internships. In that regard, if you're offered any internship, just go for the experience, and then once you get the role, you'll see that all the experience that you've accrued today or to that day, it will help you going next. So I think that graduating from the Hague University in general gives you a lot of opportunities, but you need to be very careful how you want to mainstream those afterwards. Whether you go back or whether you want to go to another country, that will depend on you and of course on your research. I think.
Thank you very much, Diane. Very legal answer. It depends, and diplomatic. No, I agree absolutely. I think it's also very hard now. I mean, in comparison to the times of my graduation, the internships were already very competitive, and now it's also very hard to get into an internship. And I think it also can be quite disappointing to students. Maria, what is your advice or opinion regarding the educational path?
So, well, it's difficult. I have a very classical education. I just graduated from Bocconi and then started working. I wanted to do an LLM at some point, but my mentor told me, why would you spend that huge amount of money of your family, by the way? If you already have, that's a good point. I mean, the point is that you need an entry point, right? So education will help you to get your entry point in the industry. And the competition is high, that's true. You need an entry point because before your first internship or job, no one knows you, no one knows how you work, and no one can give feedbacks, right? So how to get the entry point where you have to maximize your possibilities? So with education, for sure. So work hard, get very good grades, even though it's not everything. I did not graduate with a maximum of votes because my exchange in France cost me a little bit of drop in my average, but who cares? I got a decent career in any case. So of course, work hard, get the best grades you can. If you can, from like prestigious institution, universities, like the one you are, of course, amazing. And then the moment you're in, absolutely show what you can do and work hard, at least for the first years, I would say. Then maybe try to find a like work-life balance, but that's for later. I think that qualification specifically is very important. I remember when I was working at White and Case, when they hired me, I was not qualified yet, because in Italy it takes forever to get qualified, unfortunately. So if ever I will have children, I promise I will never study in Italy. I will never qualify in Italy. But jokes aside, it takes forever. And I remember my partner at White and Case pushed me really to get this bloody qualification, and he was right, because without a qualification, it is, unless you're an academic, but this is a different career, and I cannot advise on that because that's not my field, and I would lie. But from like the counsel and or arbitrator career point of view, you need a qualification to get good spots. Listen, there are people who are not qualified. I don't know if some of you know the Italian firm Bonelli. They're the main Italian firm, and Professor Crivellaro, who's also an ICSID list, etc., and was the general counsel of Salini back in the years, therefore the Salini test, etc., etc. He is not qualified, but he's a professor in Padova, in Italy. So, and I'm sorry, he is off counsel of Bonelli since, I don't know, decades, probably. It was another word, it was another time. Today, again, with this competition, I think you need to be qualified, and but also for counsel work afterwards, it will be difficult for the firm to spend your name with a client if you're not qualified in a jurisdiction, at least to say, okay, he or she is a civil lawyer, common lawyer. And also, it's part of that specialization that I told you before. I think it's useful to start working. And it's also connected to your language skills. I mean, I got my first internship with Castaldi Moore because they really needed, for a construction case, someone who could apply Italian law. So I was fresh from graduation. I was not qualified. It was really like just after graduation. But they didn't have any Italian qualified or Italian ex-student in the firm in that moment. And Italian is my mother tongue, so that was perfect. And the same for White and Case. When I applied at White and Case, actually, a parenthesis about struggles. I applied because a friend of mine told me, "Why don't you do that?" I said, "Okay, they will never call me back." So I applied, and of course they called saying, "Oh no, we're taking until 2025." Basically, I said, "Okay, whatever." And then they called me back a month later. I remember. When I was hiking in the middle of nowhere, because I'm always very lucky when they call me for interviews. And they said, "Listen, we got two very big Italian clients, and we would like to have you like next week in Paris." Like, wow, okay, 1 second. So see, they hired me there again because I could speak Italian and I was about to be qualified in Italy. So I would suggest to be qualified, if not your home country, wherever, the country where you do your LLM or wherever you can qualify. I think it makes sense to get qualified in a country where you did the most of your studies. It looks more credible on the CV, but it's not a must. I mean, again, there are different careers, there are different possibilities. But if you think about being a counsel or an arbitrator, an alternative to the academic career, again, on which I cannot advise, yes, I think it's important to be qualified. I think I said everything.
Thank you very much, Maria. Hannah or Marietta, would you like to moderate the questions from the chat?
Yes. So there's a question from Noelia. It says, has any of you combined litigation and arbitration in your careers? And what kind of challenges did it come with? Maybe Dion can start again?
Yes, I will start with the litigation one. Well, when I worked for Candice here in the UK in the marine department, and I was a litigation assistant. And then it was the very first time when I had to experience litigation for the very first time, I remember. And then there are many challenges. I mean, you really need to be familiar. If speaking about litigation, you really need to know your case. That's on one side. Otherwise, you're going to encounter many procedural challenges. You need to know the code of procedure, the CPR, because if you know how to use that one, then you can actually twist the claim to a certain extent where you can gain the benefit. There are many deadlines. There are many procedural steps to be taken. So there are many things to be taken into consideration, and if you know how to use that, then it's going to be your benefit, and it's not going to be your challenge. And that was my challenge when I started. I mean, in law school, you do study law, but you don't really study PCR or civil procedure. Speaking about the UK, and that was my challenge. So when I had to study it in practice, that was my particular challenge with arbitration. When I joined the Japan club, we are having a couple of arbitration proceedings at the moment. Not really, there are not that many challenges. First of all, it depends what the dispute would be, what would be the amount. It's mostly the challenge is mainly about costs. Because I mean, arbitration is always said to be cheap, but I can tell you in practice it's not. That's the reality. It always ends up quite more expensive, even more expensive than litigation at some points. But perhaps the obstacle with litigation, at least in shipping, would be with arbitration would be how to convince the party to arbitrate. That would be one of the main challenges: how to convince the party that they could resolve the dispute with arbitration. Because if they say yes, then you have the problems would be how to resolve the costs and everything that follows after that. That's for me.
My turn.
Yeah.
So, be very honest, no, I didn't really combine litigation and arbitration up until this position I'm currently holding. So at White and Case, I did only arbitration. At the SEC, as you can imagine, it's only arbitration. And now that I am with WeBuild, I take care of all the international disputes, which means both arbitration and litigation. This only struggle I find is that being it local, whenever it's litigation, if the case is local, right? So as Diane was saying, you apply the local procedure. And as you can imagine, I'm qualified, yes, in France and in Italy, but not in Poland, not in Romania, not in Ukraine, not in South America, anywhere. So the only thing is that I can contribute less when it's litigation than when it's arbitration, because ICC procedural rules in general, international arbitration procedure, I can contribute much more. When it's local litigation, I'm only called upon when I have to take strategical decisions. All the rest, you put it in the hands of the local lawyers. But it's equally interesting, I have to say. I'm learning a lot.
There is also one more question regarding, I think it will be to Diane, barrister to work in arbitration field in the UK.
Well, it depends on what the arbitration is, but you can be if the arbitration requires it, or you cannot be. You don't have to be necessarily qualified. But I'm 100% sure that for most arbitrations they would require you to be qualified. I mean, I have to repeat myself. It depends, but mostly you have to be qualified. Or because simply the parties would want somebody who is required, who is qualified, who is qualifications. Because if you were to represent a party, you need to prove that you've got the experience and that you've participated in other arbitration panel or in other arbitration proceedings. If you were to be the arbitrator, then of course you have to be qualified. But that on one note, but if you on a day-to-day basis, when not only about arbitration but also about litigation, for dealing with the case, when you have to deal with the case, when you have to correspond with the parties, you don't need to be qualified. In fact, many of the people that work in law firms that are speaking with clients and that are corresponding with the opponents, they're not qualified, or they're studying, or they're doing their qualification time with the law firm. So on your question, no, but at the same time you can work on on those cases without being qualified. Yeah, I think this is for me.
Thank you very much. I will now give the floor to Artemis.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Before that, I was wondering if we have any questions in the YouTube platform. I know you're moderating both. No questions there? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. As far as qualification is concerned, I know that there are different opinions about this, and very strong opinions also, sometimes coming from the common law and civil law, division. So I would like to, now we don't have everyone in the panel, but I would like to thank very much Maria Irene for staying with us. From your experience, based on what you mentioned before with energy and construction, do you think that it would be useful for a student to leave aside who says, okay, I am really interested in international arbitration. Should I pursue an LLM in international arbitration or a more general one in a prestigious university, as you mentioned before, or perhaps skip the purely legal part and proceed to a training in construction? Thank you.
Kind of depends. What do you mean by training in construction?
I mean, engineering or energy. There were some special master degrees in the UK that they are not purely legal, but they really want to focus more in fields that law is not, let's say, 100% of the work, but understanding of engineering is also very important. And I've heard a number of senior practitioners mentioning that, well, we would like to have someone who would be able to assist us with this type of work. So experts are great, but when we work in a law firm, in a big team, it would be highly appreciated. What is your view from your experience, from your fantastic experience in this field?
It's difficult. I was very, very lucky, so I didn't have time to go back to study after my graduation. Lucky or unlucky, depends. I think that between an LLM, for what I've seen, because when I was interested, I scouted a little bit the field. So between a general LLM and an LLM in international arbitration, I would still go for the LLM in international arbitration. If you already know that you are ready to do construction arbitration, then don't blame me for that. I think that a specific training would also be very interesting, because I don't know, for example, say like, I think also in Paris 2 here in Paris, they have a very good program. I think the other one is King's College in London. Like one of my colleagues that we build teaches there. He's an engineer. I think that if you're ready to do construction arbitration, you already know that that could be interesting. I think it's a very interesting possibility to do this kind of specialized master in a specific topic, so that is not international arbitration, but construction and or energy, for example. I would personally go for it, because, I mean, LLM in Harvard, of course, great, amazing. Nothing to say. It's a fantastic institution, and we cannot say anything negative, right? But also, how many people still get out of Harvard every year? I think it's around 250, right? And most of them have very good grades. And if you're not lucky to find your spot because you speak a specific language or whatever, you compete with over 250 people every single year. Honestly, right now, if you find your area of expertise that you already like, go for it. And also be realistic. Like, for example, I had a few, when I was at White & Case, I was interviewing interns at some point. And I had so many interns coming there and saying, oh, I only want to do investment arbitration. And I was looking at them and said, why are you applying here? Go to Washington. Really, it's at White & Case, at least the practice is quite clear. The Washington office does the most of investment arbitration, and the European offices do a lot of construction and commercial arbitration. So don't come here. Go to Washington. Apply to our colleagues over there. So you have to be again, faithful to your goals and consistent. For example, you want to do PIL, great. To go to, I think Leiden University has a very good master in PIL. So I think that specialization is a good thing. Never close other doors. Again, look at me. I started in energy and I ended up doing something completely different because, again, series of coincidences. But nowadays, yeah, more than an LLM. I mean, first choice LLM. Third choice general LLM. Even better LLM international arbitration. Even better, in my personal opinion, specialized formation in a specific industry. My personal view today. Maybe in 10 days I will give you another piece of advice.
Thank you very much for presenting also this ranking of the different options. And I think you also offered as a tip that students should do their research before they apply and before they go to an interview. So if they go to an interview to X office that has a big team for this type of arbitration, then it's not the ideal scenario to mention something totally different. But don't you also think that some of them, at least, they are a bit scared that if they want to practice investment arbitration and all the big teams are in DC, they need to be qualified at least somewhere in the US. At least to a certain extent, this is what we see from the CVs.
No, it's true that if compared to what it was in 2010, I think the US are becoming more and more protective towards their own US qualified students. So it's true that it's not easy to be hired in a US based firm without having a US JD. That's what I've seen. And I didn't live for long in the US. I'm not update 100%. So that's more or less my impression. At the same time, I mean, apply for whatever you want, but be a little bit smart. If you come to White & Case Paris, for example, say, listen, my dream is to do investment arbitration. If one day, if you hire me here, I will do all the construction project you want. But then if one day there is an opening to specialize in investment and have a secondment in DC, I will be more than happy to open up my horizons. That's how you can phrase it. I don't know, my boyfriend, for example, again, he qualified in Germany. Just to give you a completely different example, qualified in Germany, chose to do the very German way. So he did a PhD for 3 years. I would have never have the energy. So chapeau to whoever does the PhD and to all of you. And then he started working for Wilmer Hale in Frankfurt, where he was from. And then from there, they sent him to Wilmer Hale DC, where he did his investment cases. So yeah, I mean, he also started from something quite different and had the opportunity little by little to find his way where he really wanted to go. And now he's back in Paris, luckily for me.
Thank you for sharing these amazing journeys. Yes, please, Paula.
I just wanted to ask maybe something that before we finish, because we haven't discussed work-life balance. I think Maria mentioned this at some point, but I wanted to also ask, because I can hear my son downstairs already, so I think it's a good time to ask this question. From your experience working also in the law firm and in the arbitration institution, and Diane, from your also perspective, how do you see work-life balance? What could you advise to our students? Is there a way to, is there a place for international arbitration that requires your absolute involvement, or at this stage of your career, all places will require your absolute involvement? Or is there a way to get a little bit more time for this so-called work-life balance, if anything like that still exists in the pandemic world? Diane and then Maria.
Okay, sorry. Well, I would say wherever you're working, you should give 100% to your work. But I do recall that working for law firms, sometimes it can be quite intense, specifically in the litigation sector, when you're having so many deadlines and you have so many. You have to file a case, or you have to research a case, or you have to prepare an argument to defense. That requires so much time and is very stressful. and sometimes it's very long hours. So working for law firms sometimes can be sometimes can take more of your life than to, and so you wouldn't really have that much of free time. But of course, that's the sacrifice you do for your career and for your way forward, right? So it depends again on the law firm, but if it's a busy one, definitely you would be expected to do more. Working for insurers, perhaps the stress of filing cases with the court now is gone, because now I need to appoint the lawyer to do it for me. But but it's the same. The workload is more or less the same. The issues you're dealing with on a daily basis would are more or less the same. It is. I mean. Working as an in-house, for in-house, I would find working in-house more the place where you would be able to find this balance between work and private life. If you're in-house, if you work for if you work for a law firm, then I think that may be some sort of that may result to a disbalance. Or you will be working more than having your private life. This is my experience with here in London, but I don't know what would be the experience elsewhere. Perhaps Maria can say more on this.
Again, just to pick up your last answer, it depends. Like, for example, I have a friend who is younger than me, and she already had a second child in Freshfields in New York, and they work like crazy. So, but she had a very, very supportive partner who let her the time she needed to create her family, and she managed, and she's very happy. I have friends in King of Spalding in New York, same, that are currently working, and we're working more relaxed hours than White and Case in Paris. So the city doesn't really say anything. Also, within White and Case itself, we had people who worked crazy hours and people who had a normal work-life balance. I think it also depends on the moment and the project you're working on, etc., etc. In general, I would say that it depends also on the institution. And at the ICC, I was working a lot at the beginning because I had to learn a new job completely from scratch. Like, nothing of what I knew before was useful, more or less nothing was useful. So first 6 months were quite harsh. And then afterwards, when you learn how the machine works, you become more and more efficient. So you have more and more time for yourself. The company was the same. The first 3 months was, I don't want to say a nightmare, but it was quite intense. And now that it's also like a pretty big company, 70,000 employees all over the world. So it was difficult to understand how to ask who for what, or what for who. And so it took me a while to find my way through. Now that I have my point of reference, more or less, it's much easier. In-house, I wouldn't say that I work less. It's a completely different work. It's much more intense. So sometimes between 8:30 a.m. and 8:30 p.m., I don't even have the time to get out from my chair. But at 8:30 p.m/9, I'm done. That I know. I've never done long nights, etc. I mean, I remember my late night filings of White and Case, late night or the day after morning filing. They were normal. So that does not happen. Also depends on the dimension of your filing, etc. So I would say that it really depends. And also, big law firm versus boutique doesn't mean anything. Sometimes people work in boutique and work much more than people working, again, King and Spalding, New York. So that really depends. I think that the only way to really know is to try, to get into the firm and try. And whenever you feel you're not respecting yourself anymore, well, you just say thank you, you stop and find another solution. For now, in-house position, I like it very much. As I said, it's very intense during the day, but at some point all my colleagues stop working, so I don't receive questions anymore. So little by little, I wrap up and I get out of the apartment again. So, and also it's very important to have a very supporting team around you and a very supporting boss.